Think of Peter Parker erased from the memories of everyone he loves. Bruce Wayne hunted by the dogs of the city he just saved. Jean Grey dead by her own hand. In our biggest superhero stories, the final victory almost always requires the protagonist to surrender their identity, their reputation, or their life. As this network map illustrates, the best comic writers don't construct these climaxes as physical brawls. They build them as abstract mathematical models. They use game theory. Game theory is the study of mathematical models to figure out the optimal decision when players are in direct conflict. It's the math of strategy. Traditional protagonists play by the rules of morality. Elite antagonists set up zero-sum games where the math guarantees one outcome. To secure a physical win, the protagonist forfeits their ethics. Consider the Joker's negotiation with Gotham's mob bosses. He uses a concept called the shrinking pie. He forces rapid, costly choices on them by ensuring that the longer they wait to divide their assets, the less total payout remains to distribute. Or look at his opening bank heist, which operates on the logic of the pirate game. He maximizes his own outcome by secretly bribing his lesser accomplices to eliminate one another until he's the only one left to take the pot. This cold mathematical sadism informs his visual design. Director Christopher Nolan modeled the Joker's makeup on these distorted triptych portraits by Francis Bacon, specifically chosen to evoke deep psychological unease. The objective here isn't assassination. The Joker wants ideological corruption. He corners Batman into a trap where maintaining his one rule, not to kill, directly results in massive mathematical losses for the citizens of Gotham. The chaos on screen is never random. It is a highly calculated mechanism deployed to prove that human ethics are a mathematical vulnerability. Other antagonists use this exact same logic, but apply it to global survival. Characters like Magneto and Dr. Doom evaluate the board and determine that the current system is headed for collapse. They operate on the righteous tyrant's equation, the conviction that subjugating the Earth is the only mathematically viable way to protect it from larger cosmic or multiversal anomalies. Harvey Dent is the localized example of this struggle. He begins the story as a dashing, idealistic attorney, a performance explicitly modeled on the career and public image of Bobby Kennedy. Dent even justifies Batman's existence by citing the Roman Republic, which appointed a dictator during crises to protect the law by working outside it. But he also recognizes the warning of Julius Caesar, that a hero who lives long enough will eventually see themselves become the villain. When trauma finally snaps his psyche, Dent abandons the law for a binary coin toss, becoming the very tyrant he predicted. The distinction between hero and villain vanishes the moment a character decides the sheer math of survival justifies the cruelty of their methods. This cold logic infects the allies too. Dr. Strange began his career in the hyper-pragmatic halls of Columbia University, shifting from a medical healer to a highly calculating sorcerer. He literally refers to his decision-making as the grand calculus of the multiverse, arguing that trading a few supervillain lives is mathematically required to save an infinite number of universes. To force this calculus, antagonists rely on a specific trap. This diagram shows the prisoner's dilemma, a classic game theory experiment where two isolated parties must choose to either cooperate or betray each other. We see this exact scenario play out on the rigged ferries in The Dark Knight and during the multiversal climax of Spider-Man. Look how the payouts distribute. If both parties cooperate, they both survive. But if one betrays, the betrayer thrives while the cooperator dies. And if both act in their own self-interest and betray, they destroy each other. Antagonists deploy the prisoner's dilemma to definitively prove that when the chips are down, humanity's instinct for self-preservation will always override its morality. If the antagonist's equation is mathematically flawless, how can the protagonist possibly win? Game theory models rely on players acting in their own rational self-interest. To break the trap, the protagonist must introduce a completely irrational variable into the equation. Peter Parker makes the irrational choice to accept total social erasure. He gives up his life, his love, and his identity, essentially deleting himself from existence to break Strange's multiversal calculus. Jean Grey makes a parallel choice, physically sacrificing her own life to eliminate the global threat of the Dark Phoenix. the protagonists refuse to play the game. They actively choose to absorb the catastrophic loss themselves so the rest of the board can survive. Batman makes his final decision to become the villain in the eyes of Gotham. He preserves Harvey Dent's White Knight reputation by intentionally destroying his own. By taking the blame, Batman prevents the Joker's equation from balancing. He saves the soul of the city, but at the explicit cost of Bruce Wayne's freedom and peace. A standard Hollywood punch-out doesn't resolve this kind of conflict. A physical victory is meaningless if the antagonist successfully subverts the protagonist's morals. In the modern comic book mythos, heroism isn't defined by having the power to defeat the bad guy. It is the willingness to break the villain's equation by making the irrational choice to suffer. They're immortalized not for how hard they hit, but for what they are willing to lose.